what I've noticed in the past couple of years, and I've chaired the Learning Technologies Conference, by the way, since 2000, and my book, Learning Technologies in the Workplace, it draws on those 17 years of case studies that I've looked at. And over this period, I've noticed that time and again, people are asked to implement a learning technology solution of some form, and the same problems keep cropping up, again and again and again. And they're always avoidable. And I think that what happens is, they come up because usually the learning and development team is asked to make a learning technology work, and it has no experience of doing this beforehand. And so they're perhaps the first or the second time they've done it, and they're making the same mistakes again and again. So my aim is to try to share some of those mistakes and the way around them to try to get to the point where you don't make the mistakes and we all live in a better world. So that's the idea, trying to avoid predictable mistakes. Well, okay, I want to make your next implementation a success. I want to take a step back and just ask ourselves, what does success mean for a learning technologies implementation? I know you've had lunch. I know you're probably a bit drowsy. Maybe you had some chai to wake yourselves up. But I'm going to ask you this question. What does success mean for us, guys? Any thoughts? You just shout out. Yeah, go on. Fill the gap. Fill the skills gap. Yeah?
For which I'm passionate about.
Say again?
For which I'm passionate about.
Learning what you're passionate about. Yes?
Meeting the business objective.
Meeting the business objective.
Learning that translates into performance.
You're looking for translating it into performance impact. Yes, sir.
This is the outcome that you have achieved or which you have planned to achieve before you started the work.
Set yourself an objective and meet it. Yes?
Not by the L&D.
Learning technology has to be owned by the business and not by L&D, not just L&D, but by everybody.
For me, success is which puts the learner and the organization a part of continuous learning.
Make learning and the learner part of continuous learning within the organization. I love these answers. So my answer, I think, follows what this gentleman here said, meeting expectations, which is really what everyone was saying, but I'm just trying to make it as clear as possible. In 2 words, you're successful if you set out to do something and you did it. So I was coming here and I said to my wife, I'm going to India, do you want anything? And I could have guessed what she might want. Maybe some jewelry, maybe some scent, I don't know. We're both hard-working professionals. If we travel for work, then we like to bring something back for the other person. And she didn't say anything. She said saffron. They've got good saffron in India. We're out of saffron. Can you get some, please? Now, I could have gone back with a bottle of perfume, and she would have been nice, but what she really wanted was saffron. I haven't got it yet, by the way. I'm flying out at midnight, so everybody knows where I can buy some saffron. Please come and see me afterwards, okay? All right? Because otherwise I'm going to be in trouble. But anyway, I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't asked. I wouldn't have guessed it. So how do you know what the expectations are? Obviously, you have to ask. Now, with somebody you live with, it's a bit easier. With the learning technologies implementation, it's more complicated. And what I'm going to do is just take you through, for me, the biggest issue that leads to implementations not succeeding is not asking. It is that simple. It's that simple to describe. Now, how you then beat that is more complicated, and really that's what the next 40 minutes is going to be about. I'm going to take 35 years of experience, I'm going to squeeze it into 35 minutes, we'll have to jump some bits, but I'm going to try to make it as valuable as possible. And I should say there are 2 things that are necessary in implementation. One is a checklist, a methodology. That's what I'm describing. It's also necessary to have the right mindset, the right attitude. I'm not going to describe that, we can't get it all done. It is important. Have a cup of tea with me afterwards and we'll talk about that more if you like. So, looking at the checklist side of it, I think, in my experience looking at this, there are 6 things that you need to do, and I don't think this will be a surprise for anyone who's ever had to make anything happen. You have to understand what the issue is, plan what you're going to do, build something and test it, and then implement or launch it, and it might be a hard launch, it might be a soft launch, we don't know. You then want to go and assess, have you met what you wanted to do, and then you have to sustain it. You have to keep it going afterwards. And there's a gap in the middle here. but you may not have a gap. It might be, and I think it's very common, that you'll go through this loop several times iteratively. It depends whether you're going a cascading waterfall approach, one step, another step, or more likely an iterative approach, which tends more and more to be the case. There are some times when you can't do that, but typically it's the best way to do it because it enables you to get the feedback you need. All right, so of course take photographs, take notes, that's great, but this document which asks you what gives you a description, asks you what you're currently doing, and then asks you to write down what you need to know more about, is all available for free on that link I gave earlier, because I'd like to just spread the good practice as much as I can. All right, so we've got a methodology. We want to do those 6 steps. We're not going to cover 6 steps in 30 minutes. That would be mad. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at 3 things that I think are the core parts of this, where if you manage to get them right, you're halfway at least towards a successful implementation. Your stakeholders, your team, that central cycle. And then because we're all going to be exhausted, because I'm going to be talking very fast, at the end I want to end with a rallying cry to make everyone remember why we do this job. Bit of Japanese to begin with. I was talking about this. I'm running this course at the moment. I'm designing this course and working with people to make it better about delivering learning technologies in the workplace. And we had on it somebody from Japan, a Japanese company, and they raised this issue of nemawashi. Nemawashi means moving roots. And we've got some nodding heads here. Great. If you want to move a tree, you can't pick a tree up and move it. You have to dig around it, get underneath it, clear the roots, and move it. A bit like this. Although actually, after I posted that photograph in, I realized it's not a tree, it's a telegraph pole they're moving. But it still works. Okay, so you need to find the roots, pick it up, and move it. Why is that important? Because you can't do otherwise. And of course, it takes time. It takes time. With the learning technology implementation, the people you need to get on board are the roots. If they're not with you, you can't do anything. The people are everything. And in fact, my book finishes with the word people, because that's more important than anything else in the learning technology implementation. Why are people so important? Well, Andy Wooler of Hitachi Systems has a great phrase for this. He says, look, you can do anything with technology, but people can also stop you doing just about everything. So when I say what makes a successful learning technology implementation, it's not installing it and turning it on. It can run beautifully, but if nobody knows about it, nobody uses it, it is a failure. People can stop you doing just about everything, either actively or passively. So let's get them on board. Right, who are your stakeholders? Well, they could be anybody in the organization, can't they? They could be people who are affected by it, or the people you're going to affect. Or they could be the people who are going to alter the possible success of the implementation. We usually talk about the executive sponsors, those top people as being your stakeholders, but really, it's everybody. And I put in the IT manager and the IT team there because when I read through several, I don't know, possibly 100 or more case studies looking at this, and time and again, I found that people hadn't realized that they had a successful implementation, probably because they had a good ongoing relationship with the IT team, usually by accident. They hadn't gone out to build it deliberately. By chance, they'd worked with these people in the past, they had been in IT in the past, or they knew them, or their team worked with them, but they had a good relationship. Of all of those, it may be, depending on your solution, that the IT team is the most important. All right, what I'm going to do is describe a process. You may be familiar with parts of the process, you may be familiar with the whole process for getting your stakeholders on board. I was a bit surprised when I do this work with people in organizations, talking them through it, that although a lot of this is very simple stuff in each part, the whole of it together, very often people find they haven't done. And by doing it all together as a process, they manage to get their stakeholders on board, and it really helps them plan what they're going to do. All right, so the first thing you have to ask yourself is, like my wife with the saffron, what do they want? It's interesting, I've talked to people who've done stakeholder analysis, and they say, yes, I wrote down what the stakeholders want. I said, well, okay, so how did you know? Well, I know what they want. Well, how did you know? Well, I know. Did you ask? Like my wife with the saffron. No, they didn't. And they're making it all up, and they're living in their L&D world in their heads. And of course, that's a ticket to disaster, because you come back with a bottle of scent, and she wants saffron. So go out and do the interviews. Now, this is actually, for a lot of L&D people, quite challenging, but it's got to happen. You've got to go out, you've got to meet the people, and they're very often people who are possibly negative or against you or your plan. That's all right. You're going to get them on board. Those people could destroy your plan if you don't talk to them. So you've got to talk to them sometime. This is very straightforward. This is from Harvard Business Review, what the idea is, but it's very regular. Who's your stakeholder? How important are they? And what's their view of it? Important here means how important is it? What's the priority for dealing with them in some way? Okay, how do you get that information? Well, you've got to identify them and interview them, and you do that by asking them a bunch of questions, which will then come out in this document you're going to put together. So you're going to interview them and get an understanding of them by asking these questions. Well, you ask the first 6 as questions. Number 6 is terribly important. What do you want from India? What's a win for them? So what's going to make them feel, yes, this was good for me? And you can just ask the question. We're not saying, what training do you want? We're saying, what's wrong with your situation? How can we improve it? You're not going to ask them number 7, but you have to work out for yourself number 7 during the conversation. You have to work out, are they for me? Are they against me? How much impact could they have on my project? You can't ask them, by the way, are you going to try to destroy my project? But you can sort of get an idea of it. Why is that important? Because the next thing you're going to do is your stakeholder analysis. Basically, you'll fill up your columns here of the people you've spoken to, and the columns are all going to come out of those questions you've asked. So the questions enable you to fill up your grid for the stakeholder analysis. By the way, this comes from Tiffany Prince of Prince Performance Solutions. It's a very standard technique, but I'd recommend going and checking out Tiffany. And you may not be able to read this, but the words don't really matter. The point is you've got essentially your questions and your people. And of course here, you're saying who's going to deal with that and what are they going to do. So you're moving from an analysis to an action plan. But there's another piece of action, I think, which is crucial to take, and that's to understand who's on board, who's not on board, and how am I going to get people on board. And for that, I'd recommend your analysis grid. How enthusiastic are they about it? What impact are they going to have? Now, actually, as a completed document, this may be useful, it may not, but the discussion you have with people, putting this together with the rest of your team, provides a great deal of value. If you're sitting down with this at the table and everyone's looking at it and they're saying, no, I don't think they're there, I think they're there. Or this team belongs here, or this team belongs there, you can move people around, have that discussion, and really get an understanding of where your stakeholders are. Could be an individual, could be a team, whatever. And of course, not every part of this grid is equally important. People in L&D that I know, unfortunately, love to spend their time down here. These are the people who are enthusiastic about the project, but they're not going to have any influence. So these are all the people who like you. That's nice. I don't care. Sorry. The ones you need to spend your time with are the people up there who don't like you and who can ruin it. Focus on those, give them the news, keep them on board, and by showing yourself as a professional, you're going to move them across to the Maintain Actively section. And of course, the people who like you and who can really influence it, that's great. By the way, it's quite possible to make this move, and when you do it, those people who move across are often your strongest supporters, because they've seen the negative side, and now they're with you. All right. But how do you do that? How do you focus them and move them across? Well, you need to have a communications plan. Now, this is not rocket science. None of this is rocket science. In fact, this is all whatever the opposite of rocket science is. I don't know. Easy. It's straightforward. Well, it's straightforward, but it's not easy. Your communications plan is a bit like the stakeholder analysis piece. Right, who's my audience? What do they see as the negatives? What's going to mitigate that? What's the message I'm giving those people? How am I moving them from the anti-quadrant to the positive quadrant? What's my frequency of contact and the method? And by the way, who's going to do it? You notice there's always somebody who's carrying the can at the end. I got this from Maria van Vlodrop, who spent her lifetime in advertising and marketing and then moved into working for an LMS provider. She's an Armenian-American living in Belgium, and she's multilingual. She transformed what the LMS provider did. They've now been bought, so I'm not trying to sell you an LMS. She transformed what that LMS provider did by going in and helping organizations that bought the LMS by doing this and just sitting down and saying, how are you going to communicate? And here's the issue. I work with a lot of L&D people who say, yes, we've got a communications plan. The communication plan consists of a series of emails. That's not a communication plan. I have 500, I confess it, don't tell anybody, I have 500 unread emails in my inbox right now. That's after my PA has gone through and got rid of the stuff I don't need to look at. An email mail shot is not a great way of doing your communications. Yes, you have to do it, but it's part of it. So be creative and think about other ways, other methods you can use to get in touch with people. Now, if you're not sure, Maria has a great tip. Maria's tip is, go and have lunch with your VP of marketing. They've got loads of ideas, they're generally helpful, they always love a free lunch, and they'll be happy to give you some good ideas. They may even put somebody on your team. And we're going to come to the team in a second, because that's the second point of the three things which are crucial to making your implementation a success. All right, so just to recap with our stakeholders. Your stakeholders can be anybody, it's not just the people at the top. You're going to identify them, you're going to go and talk to them and interview them, put them on the grid and build out that communications plan. I'm going to have to stop. I've been talking quite a lot very fast. I'm going to have some water. And I'm just going to ask if anybody's got any questions at this stage, please throw your hand up or just shout out. Is this all straightforward? Is it all like making sense? Yes, of course it makes sense. You know, it's just people. It's just people, and that's what is going to make our technology succeed or not. Nemawashi, we've dug round our tree, we're ready to move it, the people are on board, but you can't dig a tree up by yourself, you need to have a team to do it. And what I want to look at next is our team, and two parts of that. One is how we relate together with the rest of the organization as a team, and then secondly, who should be on the team. Okay, so our stakeholders, we've talked about influencing them individually, but we do have to also influence the rest of the organization, and there are different parts that need influencing. Very often we think, well, we've got to have a steering committee for an implementation. That's a great idea, and I would recommend it. Your steering committee gives you air cover. It gives a way to talk to the top level of the organization and share with them what's important about it. And so you want to have some of these sorts of people on it. There are two things that happen here. You've got a flow of information going both ways. You're telling them what's going on, but also they're telling you their personal reaction and by proxy what the reaction is of the people they represent. So if you've got the head of HR there, or, I don't know, somebody from the finance department, they will feed back to you, well, we can't do that for various reasons. You need to push in a different direction. Those regular bits of conversation save you from making a disastrous mistake. And people do make disastrous mistakes. There was a national airline that managed to buy an LMS, which they went through the whole procurement process. They bought it. They were very happy to implement it. After they implemented it, they discovered that it didn't have the capability of doing the learning offline. They tested it with all the people in the airport. That's fine. They didn't test it or even include the people from the air crew side. So the flight attendants, the pilots, everybody who moves around couldn't use the LMS because they went somewhere with their iPad, they opened it up, and they couldn't access it. They had to scrap the implementation and go out and buy a new one. If they'd had somebody representing those people on the steering committee, then they would have known about it and made a better decision. That's just one small example. But there are lots of other people. I think people generally think, yes, a steering committee is a good idea. There are lots of other bodies it's a good idea to be in touch with. So Megan Barrett at Hershey Company, the chocolate manufacturers in the US, when they implemented their LMS, she was very keen on getting an HR business partner group. She had 2,000 people she was aiming to get in touch with initially, and then subsequently many more thousand across the globe. She needed to have HR partners in each of their plants that she could be in touch with to know if she was doing the right thing or the wrong thing. They're not on the team, but they need to have a regular bit of information going backwards and forwards to them. She also had a problem with her own L&D staff. She had people throughout the world who were developing material and were very wedded to the idea that their job was to create a course and deliver it. Once the LMS was in place, their job would be fundamentally changed. So from the very moment that she started thinking about it, before she got the sign-off for the LMS, she started thinking about it. She was in touch with these people to get them understanding what was going to happen and to make it clear that after the implementation, there would be new jobs of a different type available. You don't know what you don't know. She knew that these people were going to could have difficulty with it. She didn't know what it would be. Many of them did, but she was able to persuade them to be positive about it. And effectively, this was one group that she moved from that top left quadrant to the top right quadrant. And because they spoke to lots of people in the organization, they could have completely scuppered it. But as it was, she got them on board as enthusiastic participants. I've talked about the IT department, how it's vital to have a regular flow, and in fact, we'll see that you might even want IT department people on your team in some form. The vendors and their partners, now very often, there's an issue with your vendor. Maria, who I talked about earlier, was in the process of selling LMSs and then afterwards carrying on and helping people implement them. For a lot of vendors, that doesn't happen. For a lot of vendors, you've got your sales team, you have your pre-sales consultants. I see a few nodding heads here, they know where this is going. And then after the sale, you've got other people. These people very often don't know what these people said. They often haven't, lots of nodding heads, they haven't had a conversation. These guys are all enthusiastic, it's going to do everything for you. These guys want to get it done and move on to the next job. They're not negative, but they've got a mortgage to pay. So when you're talking with your vendor in the pre-sale stage or the sales stage, make sure you know what's going to happen afterwards. And I would absolutely say, after the sales stage, make it clear to them you're expecting them to be on board with your team, at the very least, with communication. And it may be something else as well, because the implementation team doesn't exist just by itself. It's got layers to it. You've got a core team, you've got adjunct role, you've got observers. You don't necessarily want somebody from the vendor to be on your team 24/7, but you might want them involved in one of the layers of that onion. I say onion, in one of the layers of the team. All right. I'm going very, very, very fast. But that's because I always start fast so I can slow down. If you start slow and then speed up, it's no good. I hope this is all making sense. This is practical stuff born of people's hard experiences. I don't want you to suffer the issues that they've suffered. All right, so I'm looking at this onion, this strange blue rectangular onion here. What's inside it? Who should be, let's drill down. Who should be in your core team? Who are the adjunct roles and who are the observers? I actually asked this question very recently on LinkedIn, and somebody came up with, well, I've just thrown it up there for a second. Do that again. Okay. He drew a whole picture of his implementation team and everything. Oh, that's fantastic. It's like you outsource to LinkedIn and they come back with artwork for your next presentation. It's brilliant. I'm going to ask you, who do you think should be on your team? Just shout it out. Tell me. By the way, I've got in my mind 4 roles which are absolutely essential. Project manager is one, yeah.
Experts, top management partners.
L&D experts and top management partners, yes. Anybody else? Yes? You're very kind. I can't. Business representatives. They've got to be on there somewhere, absolutely right. Oh, yeah? IT. Say again? Stakeholders. Okay. Yes, these people should all be on there at some layer or another. All right, so this is Anthony Williams. The link is there, so you can go and find this on LinkedIn and download it. And of course, this is in that file which you can download from the website. This is the technical project manager. He looks like a hero, doesn't he, from a movie? I'm a technical project manager. Not my life, I'm afraid. It's much more, that's like Princess Jasmine there for, I don't know what she's doing. She's a tester. All these people, and also the interactions between them, I think it's fantastic. And he said actually doing this really helped him understand who the people were and how they should work together. Some were inside the organization and some were outside the organization. I then went through all the comments that people had left, and people had left, this is only a summary of all the comments that people had left saying what they thought should be on the team. Okay, on here, there are 4 people that I think are at your core team. Sorry, that's wrong actually, not 4 people. I say core team roles for a reason. Actually, those 4 roles might be done by one person, and they very often are. So you've got 4 roles here, and I think the 4 roles, I would ask you who you think they are, but I'm just going to tell you. Here are my 4 key roles. Yes, project manager, absolutely. A product owner, I'll come back to that in a second. Come on, I've been talking for the first 15 minutes about stakeholder analysis. Of course I'm going to say marketing and communications. And I think you need a leader. I think if you've got more than one person on a team, you have to have somebody, or you have to have a role of making sure everyone's doing what they're doing. Of course, as I say, those 4 things can all be done by one person. They very often are. Leader, Marcoms, a product owner, that was something that I didn't expect to come out of this conversation. Actually, I originally had 3 core roles. I've now expanded it to 4. The product owner is the person whose job it is to work with the business and make sure that they've got continuity. After implementation, in the 6th step, its ownership is sustained into the business, because very often the L&D team is not involved at that stage. All right. My core roles then are those 4, and they're frequently in contact with each other. They decide the planning. In addition, I think you've got adjunct roles, and some of the names and roles that were shouted out, I don't think are in the core, but they're part of it. Adjunct roles, perhaps IT, perhaps business. IT could be in the middle, depends on what you're doing. They've got less frequent contact, and you've got observers who come when they're asked to, and they don't have any input into the planning. They're just there to see what's going on. Again, it's not rocket science. It's a very simple PowerPoint slide, but it's based on 17 years of pain of other people. So take that pain and put it to good use and try to avoid not having the right people in your team arranged in the right way. Absolutely, please make sure that you've got somebody with some project management skill on your team if it's at all a large management project. Megan Garrett at Hershey had no project management experience. She got a woman from the IT team to do the project management. She could not have successfully implemented her LMS without somebody else running the project side of it for her. So here are some key questions to ask yourself. Have I got everything covered? How many people do I actually need for my core? And are they full-time or part-time? Most of the people are not going to be full-time on your team, but some will be part-time. Oh, and finally, just a reminder, this is not everything. You can have people on the team who are no good, so make sure, again, they've got the right mindset. You've got to ask the question, you've got to be able to deal with the people. Your central cycle of build, test, implement, assess, and then build and test again. I'm not talking about data here, I'm not talking about anything else technical to do with implementation. Again, because implementations are about meeting expectations, getting people on board. So what I'm going to be talking about here is how you make sure that whatever you're doing technically, you're getting feedback that enables you to develop it better. So I'm going to look at the build and test part of this, although really what I'm going to talk about, feedback mechanisms, apply also in implement and possibly even in the assess stage as well. So we've got Nick Shackleton-Jones, who went to BP, British Petroleum, he said his job was originally to help mind the LMS. He transformed the role into something where people were coming from different parts of the organization asking him to do work for him. So he changed his role from being a passive L&D LMS admin person to actually transforming how learning took place at BP. And he did it through the Discover BP program. Discover BP took an onboarding program that had been used by a few hundreds of people a year when they were recruiting something like 20,000 people a year. And he transformed it by getting the people who'd gone through that, people who'd been at the organization for 3 months. He set together 12 focus groups, of 15 people each, people who are 3 months into their job, and using a variety of interactive workshop techniques, found out what they needed for their jobs. They did 2 things. They had a graph of emotional high and lows, and they also had some practical questions about what they needed to do their jobs. And the top 10 tasks they felt ill-equipped for after 3 months. That gave them all they needed to completely write a proper onboarding program. Their task was to improve time to autonomy. They absolutely did. As a result of the Discover BP program, Nick was able to transform his role, was able to improve the fortunes of the business, and improve his own fortunes as well. He's now a senior consultant at PA Consulting as a result, because they saw what he'd done and they took him over, and all his team as well. So it's not just good for your company, it can be good for your career if you do a good learning technology implementation. Ask, just ask, in the right structured way, and you'll find out how you build it right. Our next quick case study is Jeremy Smith at Herman Miller. They were rolling out a support system. They needed to know if it was working properly. People were distributed all over the US, so they couldn't get face-to-face focus groups. They did them online. A focus group online sounds like a nightmare. They did a perfect job with it. They limited numbers to 12 for each one. They made sure people introduced themselves personally at the beginning. They had 1 hour, and they took time for those personal introductions to make sure that they built a feeling of trust in that group. They asked a consistent set of 6 questions, so they had great data across the organization. They had a facilitator and a note taker. If you're ever doing a focus group, always have those 2 roles. You got nodding heads there, yeah, because you can't do both. They took a recording, they set the duration of 1 hour, they stuck to it, and they made sure they had people that represented the organization. It was a painstaking process getting people to attend these online webinars, online feedback focus groups, but it totally worked. And the result was that they saw an uptick in sales supported by the system because people knew how to use it properly. Very quickly, it's been a roller coaster ride of 40 minutes. Well, not quite 40 minutes. I've got 3.5 minutes left because I want to give you that rallying cry. I've been talking about learning technology, and it's very exciting. And I run a conference. I know if I run a conference, I have to put mobile learning, video on there. I have to put AI on there. But what I really want to put on there is the stuff about the learning side of it. I'd like to ask you a question. What is our role? What do we actually do? What do we actually do in our field? When I graduated and went straight into teaching, training. I went straight into training. Everyone else went to banking. Where are they now? Well, of course, they're all filthy rich and living in huge houses in London, but that's another matter. I'm happy with what I'm doing. What's our role? What did I get into in the first place? It reminds me, and the reason I've got some pools here, it reminds me of the tale which you've probably heard in other ways about Christopher Wren as he walks through St. Paul's and it's being built. And he sees 3 masons, and the first ones, they're all chipping away. He says to the first one, "What are you doing?" He says, "Oh, I'm carving a gargoyle." Okay. Next one, "What are you doing?" "I'm making 3 shillings a week." Oh, fine. So he's doing something. This guy's making money for his family. Ask the last one, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm making a cathedral," without looking up. We don't know if it's true, but you get the idea. We do lots of things day to day. We make courses. We teach people. We implement technology, but that's not what our role is. It's not what we do, but what we make possible. In all this learning technology stuff, let's not forget this bit here. We help individuals and organizations achieve their potential. And that's why we're doing it. That's why I'm doing it. I'm sure it's why you're doing it too. Otherwise, I would have gone into banking now. That's me. That's the book. That's the URL. If that URL is too small, here's a big URL. Okay? And that's where you can get the presentation, you can get the links, and you get that sheet that describes the 6 steps and helps you go through the process. That was actually 35 years condensed into 39 minutes. We've got 1.5 minutes left for any questions that anybody might have.
When it comes to convincing steering committee or say CHR or the CXOs of a company, for learning, especially when it comes to reverse mentoring, that is the learning from millennial or the learning from the junior most staff, which is like new entrants. And there is a lot to learn from them today. I mean, actually the reverse mentoring is happening over the industry.
Sure.
So how do we convince them on that?
I think if you have to start convincing your steering committee, you may be starting in the wrong place. By which I mean this. I think a steering committee is a group of people.
Right.
I wouldn't get them all together and say, I'm going to sell you an idea, because I think at that stage, that's the wrong thing to do. I would start, okay, Mark Ohlert used to run the LMS for the Department of Defense in the US, which is 2.2 million people it's responsible for. I said, how do you make anything happen with 2.2 million people? And he said in 6 words, start small, think big, move fast. Start small, think big, move fast. What that meant for Mark was he found not all those people together. He found one person or 2 people that would get it, worked with them and built a business case. So if the others don't understand reverse mentoring or anything else that you're doing, somebody in the organization will get it. If you work with those, then you can build your case. You don't persuade them. Those other people persuade them because they can show what you've done. And I did this with the British Army with competencies. And goodness me, the British Army is a training organization. That's all they do all day long. Well, if they're not fighting, they're training. And so we found one guy in this thousands of people who had 30 people. 30 people, that was all. And we got those people through a competency program. And it transformed what they were doing. We got somebody else on board. 2 years later, I know it's a long time, but 2 years later, we had the steering committee in place. So I know it sounds like a facile argument, but I'm afraid you've got to find somebody who you can persuade. One person you can persuade, get them on board, and let that then be your persuader for the committee. Is that an answer? It's an answer. You're not happy with it. Yeah.
One is this, that anything about spending, I have to get the buy-in of the CFO.
Yes.
And the CFO as a stakeholder doesn't understand LMS.
Okay.
And
fine.
the second, this one is, anything about LMS or technologies, people tell me to go to the IT guy.
Okay, if people need to be persuaded to buy, and I'm sorry, I was going to have a whole bit about value, which I took out because we didn't have time.
That's what.
It's about showing the value case. And that's about having conversations with managers and stakeholders to understand what are their problems and how can we bridge them, and I'm going to need some money to bridge them, and about finding how painful and expensive those are. If we can find how painful they are, then we can persuade them to part with money. Unless we can have that conversation in the first place and express the impact in a way that they understand, it might be performance, it might be turnover, it might be something else. Without that, then you can't persuade people usually to part with money. So I'm afraid it's a matter of having an in-depth conversation, ideally using a performance consulting approach. Okay, my purpose is to end the presentation and begin the conversation. So please, ask me your questions. I might not know the answer, but I have lots of people I know. One of them will do. So if you've got something you can't face, I'm here to serve you. Mail me, tweet me, get hold of me on LinkedIn, and I will find somebody who's got an answer for you. All right? Donald H. Taylor. Thank you very much.